Sri Lanka's most powerful news brand.
A very good evening to you. You are watching Biz1st in Focus on the first program we have for this year 2018. Today we are not going to focus on the negativities we saw last year. We are going to focus on the good things that we can expect for the year 2018. And I have here with me the President of the National Chamber of Exporters, Mr. Ramaja Singh. Good evening to you, sir.
Good evening, Happy New Year, and look forward to a progressive 2018 to
Happy
you
New
and
Year
your
to you.
viewers.
Thank you very much. Mr. Jayasinghe, let's start off with a look at what we saw in the last year. We saw a positive trend in a lot of sectors, and we saw that coming on to especially the month of November as well.
Yes.
If you look at the month of December and that time frame, was the positivity still there?
Certainly. What we have is a 1.5 billion US dollar income on exports for the December month. So the growth has been steady. It's been improving slightly month over month. So the export performance for 2017 has been good.
Mr. Jayasinghe, now we know that there is an issue surrounding the GSP plus from the United States as well. But if you take a look at the GSP plus from the European Union, has it played a key role when it comes to this export earnings we have heard?
If you are referring to the US GSP, it is a generalized preference that encompasses the developing countries. So it is not unique to Sri Lanka. Along with Sri Lanka, there will be so many countries, 122 countries that would be affected. And again, it's not, now we export 2.8 billion to the US. Out of that, there are items like apparel, tea, rubber, coconut, and products of that nature that are not affected by this GSP. But there will be packaging products, plastics, products like that, that would be affected. But nonetheless, this is a process that happens, and what we hear is that this is a review process. And what is of anxiety is how long will the Congress take to actually ratify it. So I think it's a matter of time, but this is not something unique to Sri Lanka. But certainly the export sector that would be sending such products would be affected.
Mr. Jayasinghe, now we heard the Deputy Minister Dr. Harsha De Silva explaining to us what this GSP actually means, and that this is not the GSP plus that everyone talks about that we get from the European Union, but this is from US, and as you said, it does not only affect us as a country, and it affects several other countries. 122 is the number. But my question to you is, Mr. Jayasinghe, when we look at the sectors that are affected by the US GSP that has been delayed, if I may put it that way, is there a plan B for those sectors? Is there another market that we can look at or make the same amount of earnings that they did with the US GSP?
Well, we have to concede that the US is the largest market, and I'm sure for products of this nature, the US would amount to at least definitely anything over 50% of their output or export earnings. So definitely, yes, there is a impact. But this also gives us a challenge. I believe that in times of crisis, we learn something. Now, when you start the interview, you said the negativities of last year, but the negativities are an opportunity to learn.
Definitely.
And what we can do better, what we can change, how we can meet these challenges. And looking forward into this year, I can assure you that we don't foresee business as usual. It wouldn't be a scenario like that. So it would mean us looking at new ways, new markets, as you say, so that we don't depend on one market. But nonetheless, the US is the biggest export market for us.
Mr. Jayasinghe, when we move ahead into this new year, we see that the government said that there will be a lot of FDIs coming in. And when you take a look at what has happened in the previous year and the year before that, we've seen a lot of FDIs coming in, but those FDIs were not actually FDIs, if I may put it that way, because we saw a lot of other politics involved in all that we saw. So without going to the politics side of it, I want to ask you a question. Are there FDIs coming in, or is the positive impact in terms of the economy there in the FDI sector as well, or attracting FDIs?
Actually, I think everybody wants to invest and they are interested in Sri Lanka. But again, we need to have our infrastructure right. One of those are power, the price of power. And the most pressing issue is the skilled labor. So I think FDIs and also the ease of doing business. Now, if those infrastructural requirements are met, I remember about somewhere early last year, the Honorable Prime Minister saying that one of the issues that we have is the availability of land. But again, plans are afoot to make land available so that FDIs can come, set up factories, maybe new ways of setting up factories, maybe multi-story factories, industrial parks, things like that. So the FDIs are trickling in, but we need to open the tap and actually have a gush of FDIs. So to do that, we need to get our infrastructure right. We need to get our power infrastructure and our skilled labor, and also the ease of doing business. I think the ease of doing business would be most important, because it's not just manufacturing but also the services sector. And now we see the shipping has been liberalized. So there is a start. So, sorry.
Mr. Jasinghe, now if we look at the form here, we had a little mini heart attack when the Russians imposed a ban on agri-products, including tea, going out from us to them. And then on the 25th, almost as if we got a Christmas gift, we saw that ban being lifted because the issue was being solved by the group that went there. Another lesson, don't you think, that we can learn to make sure that these things don't happen in the future?
This is the thing. Now, what the NCE thinks, that rather probably it was one exporter where this happened. And I think, in fairness to the tea industry and to the tea export, it will take a lot of effort to make sure that we meet their standards and keep to the highest quality, that they should not be penalized. So I think the concept of commercial diplomacy is very, very important, and I think it is the manifestation or the workings of commercial diplomacy that solve the problem. As the Honorable Dr. Harsha De Silva mentioned when he was in the Foreign Ministry, that commercial diplomacy would be the thrust of this government. Now, it is going to be more important, or more so ever important, in the year to come, because we have seen the issue. We had a rumble with Pakistan on agriculture products, and since we are exporting mainly agricultural goods, we got to have the workings of this commercial diplomacy to its peak. So I think that is important. And on the other hand, what we can do at the ground level, which the NCE is very closely engaged in, is giving the training and know-how. So on packaging, on what the other country or the markets need, we are intensifying our training programs to our exporters and potential exporters, so that we maintain the integrity and the quality of our exports.
Mr. Jasinghe, now there are several other chambers operating in the country as well. The exporters also do a massive job when it comes to keeping the sector as a whole. My question to you is simple. Now, when we move on to the year 2018, as a chamber, if I am to ask you a message that you have for the government or the policymakers of this country, what is that message?
It is consistency. Now, one of the things we are concerned about is the oncoming elections. So the local government elections could, if there is a big change, could potentially upset the direction that we have provided. Now, these are areas that whoever is in power, certain plans have been set afoot, and we should stick to those plans. So one of the most important things is we need consistent policy and direction.
With that, we head into a short commercial break. You're watching Biz1st in Focus. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Biz1st in Focus. We are in discussion with Mr. Ramal Jasinghe about the year 2018 and the exports that are going out from our country. Mr. Jasinghe mentioned to us before we head into the break about consistency of policy. I'm going to ask a question from you, Mr. Jasinghe. Now, we've seen various governments coming into power. Even when this government came into power, there was this lack of policy, the lack of consistent policies all throughout, and we are seeing that even in the export sector as well. If I am to ask you what areas the government should put their attention to or put their focus to completely in terms of exports, what is lacking?
Actually, in fairness to the government, they had launched last year the National Export Strategy Working, and that was supported by the ITC, where they did a lot of work. There were consultants from Harvard and there's a lot of effort going on, and they've taken the stakeholders into the formulation, and it was a very well articulated workshop-based strategy formation. So in November they finalized the NES, the National Export Strategy, and that has been, I think, is now with the Prime Minister, and they've got to roll it out. So the sooner that is rolled out, that gives a national export strategy, which hopefully would dovetail with the Vision 2020, so that we have a consistent flow of actions that would make a strategy. The other most important thing is branding Sri Lanka. So the national brand strategy is an extremely important area that we need to strengthen on, and the EDB led a team of marketing professionals and marketing academics, and which formed the think tank. And we believe that the brand strategy is now finally crystallizing, and that we should see a brand strategy soon. Now the point is, how soon? Now we need to have this, because a lot of work has been done throughout 2017. So the sooner we get these two strategies out, then we have focus.
Which is asking, establishing that brand, when it comes to setting up a brand to say this product is from Sri Lanka, or to establish that name, we can't have a situation where we export tea with bugs. We can't have a situation where the quality of the product is undermined by a simple situation, or the ignorance of one particular company or an institution. Has there been a situation after this ban has been lifted, has there been a situation to your knowledge to say that this is the company that exported the tea with the bug, and has action been taken?
As we know and as we speak now, not yet. And whoever that offending company or whoever that export was has not been brought to light to the export community. Now, it is quite possible that the tea sector is dealing with it, and we hope so. But I think because it affects everybody, so there should be measures even at a state level to prevent that, which I haven't seen coming out yet.
And I want to ask the flip side of that. The lack of action, or the not taking action, will that have an impact as well? Because someone can take a precedent out of what is going on and say, this happened in the past, nothing happened to them.
It could very, very well happen. But the thing is, what are the measures that we are taking? Now, all we can do as a chamber is to give them training and also awareness, and saying this is what a particular market expects, please stick to that. Because what will happen is, I mean, we are knocking on their door. It's not like this is something that they need to buy, because we are in competition with other markets and with other exporters. So we need to harp on our quality, on the specialty that we can give them, and on the service. So to do that, we need to we talk a lot about SME based exporters. So we need to educate them. So the whole focus of, or the strategy of the NCE for this year is to provide that technical know-how.
Mr. Jasing, moving forward into this year, we see, we always talk about the markets in the European Union, the market in the USA, but other markets, are we tapping into them, or are we going to be like, is there work in progress there, or are we still looking at the main markets in the European Union?
There is work, particularly in the Middle East. Now the Middle East, where RT is sought after. And on top of that, recently the NCE facilitated the session with the SAIF zone in Sharjah, which is the equivalent of a free trade zone, where our exporters could actually set up shop there.
Right.
Now the advantage is you have the warehousing, you have the office facilities, and also you have access to the African market, which probably directly from Colombo to get into those markets would be different.
Right.
So what the NCE is trying to do is to build these synergies with other facilitating organizations around the world to encroach or to get into those markets. So it is a start, and so far the response has been very, very positive. And we hope to bring in more of our exporters, particularly the small and medium scale who can't have access to those markets, where the marketing and the warehousing and the administrative functions could be handled by a station in the SAIF zone for the moment.
Mr. Jasing, now, even though the budget for this year was in November last year, everyone is looking forward to see the budget actually doing what it is supposed to do. While people are a bit worried about this 25,000 rupee fine coming into place, there are other things that have been suggested by the budget, like establishing various institutions that would help import and export. This was very clearly mentioned by the finance minister when he was reading out the budget in November last year. Now I want to ask you, Mr. Jayasinghe, let's focus on the budget for a bit and what we can see during this year. Is there anything out of the budget that has been, as the year starts, that has been put into fast track?
It's like this. Now for the export sector, the Apex Bank, which was mentioned at the budget speech, now the faster that the Apex Bank is formed and actually to facilitate and finance and help our exporters to get into the markets, that would be a huge positive push for us to make a difference. So what we feel is that the tax regime, the export Exim Bank or the Apex Bank as we call it here, would be implemented as fast as possible. So all these rules will come into play from 1st of April. So right now we are in a process of preparation to meet those. But again, if those change between now and April, it's going to be of no use. But we feel that this time there has been a process. The budget has been passed with a 2/3 majority, so it's unlikely that anything would be reversed. So it gives us a strong sense of direction. So it hopefully that roadmap would be consistent.
Mr. Jayasinghe, now as you very correctly said, if the change will come eventually and the policies will change in the future, then there is no point of having all these things put in place. Is there anything that we can see in the very short run, in the near future, in terms of what has been envisaged by the budget, bringing in an actual result?
It's like this. When the budget speech was made, we have a direction as where we are heading. So we have the SMEs have been working towards achieving those. So offhand, the only thing that we can think of is make your production more efficient, get our services more efficient, and up your game. And particularly, we need to catch up on innovation and research and development. So the budget has provided that relief.
Right.
So now it is up to us, the export community, to exploit that.
With that, we have to go into another short commercial break. Stay with us. You're watching Biz1st in Focus. In Focus, we are in discussion with Mr. Ramal Jayasinghe, the President of the National Chamber of Exporters. Mr. Jayasinghe, before we went into the break, we started speaking about research and development and how it's important. Yes, as you very correctly mentioned, the budget has provided those incentives. What, in your knowledge, has the export sector, the key players or the companies that are involved in the export business done to actually ensure? I know it's just been 2 months since the budget was announced, but are we seeing any progress, is my question to you.
It's like that each of our exporters would have their research and development and other programs as a tight trade secret. But we can see efforts, particularly in the food processing industry and in similar industries, where there is some experimentation going on. So of course, to support that, you have to have institutions like the ITI, which is a state institution, the Rubber Research Institute, Coconut Development Board, things like that, actually getting activated on the research and development line. Now those institutions that I just mentioned were very strong entities 20, 30 years ago.
Right.
But with the country opening up, the importance of those institutions seem to have got diluted. So I think it is up to the individual export or the enterprise to exploit it. But the only snag there is, which we also brought it up on the pre-budget proposal stage, was you have to have about 3 or 4 years of 90% of your research goods to qualify for the tax break. Now, what we emphasize is that research and development is a journey. So it depends on how long the journey will take, and it's not the destiny but the journey.
Right.
So we would like the government to look at relief to support the journey towards research and development. So yes, to answer your question, I am quite sure that SMEs in particular have taken research and development and innovation on board.
Mr. Jayasinghe, again, there is a lot of talent in our country, and we know it in terms of the business, in terms of the sector. You might know very key individuals playing a good role and doing the business in a proper manner, but that is not enough if countries that are in the region, South Asian region, or countries that are even outside, come and dump whatever they do not want into our country, and that is going to be a problem to us. We've seen this in the past. We've seen a lot of activity happening in terms of that. What is your view on the anti-dumping happening?
We are very, very strong and very passionate about the anti-dumping laws that should be implemented. Now, we have heard that the legislation has been finalized, it's in Parliament, and we are eagerly looking forward to the passing on that. Because one of the biggest issues we have as a manufacturing entity is scale. Now, we have to compete against mass-produced competition.
China, Bangladesh,
India, right? So we need to have very strict and very firm anti-dumping laws and policies, and give the space for our exported products or for our manufacturers to exploit and at least to get a market for those, for our items.
Mr. Jasingh, now the two examples that we mentioned are very powerful countries, India and China. Do you think that there will be a situation where we, the exporters or the country, as Sri Lankans, we can have a situation where we can dictate terms and say, no, this is our law and this is what we are doing? Or will it be a law that would bring us to a compromise and to say, no, you do this and we'll adjust this part of it?
Well, being involved in the national export strategy, this has been an area which we have spoken about. So there's been the up and down battle about this, what we call the list. It's called the exclusion, the list of items that can be brought in duty free.
Right.
So the negotiators have managed to rationalize that list to a great extent, but still negotiations are going on. So that should provide the protection to our manufacturers.
Ms. Jasingh, again, now hypothetically, let me pose this question to you. Hypothetically, if there is a situation where the country is facing some form of natural disaster, be it weather or even a man-made disaster, if a powerful country in the region is trying to help us by sending in aid or something, because there is no free lunch per se, and if they come and say, no, with this we are going to send in these goods, why don't you just accept it as a, maybe a goodwill? Situations like that, you cannot stop those, can you?
Yeah, but I'm sure that the negotiations and the rule-making framework would protect that, because that would be a blatant violation of a free trade agreement and the anti-dumping law. So I'm sure the safeguards have been taken by the lawmakers.
That was, of course, a hypothetical question. So, trade liberalization, Mr. Jasingh, we've spoken about it, the government has spoken about it and provided certain key elements as to, in the short run, what they're planning to do in terms of liberalizing trade. What is your view on that?
It's like this, trade liberalization should be a two-way process, not a one-way process. Now, what we have experienced in the past is in certain export markets, you get non-tariff barriers, which they are not in black and white, but for various reasons, you could have your quarantine not being passed, your documentation not moving smoothly, you're having to pay demurrage because your goods have been detained. So those are that's the first hurdle that we need to surmount. And we have to have a very mutual, open understanding for these FTAs to work. So even though we have, or we would plan to have a FTA with China or India, you might find the interstates in those two countries could have their various rules and regulations, which in short, we don't have that here because we are a small country and we can get the whole, everything here, whatever we want, import or export. But what is our situation? So FTA essentially should be a two-way process where we are treated as equals.
And is that happening when we look at the FTAs that are being discussed? Do you think it's a two-way street, or is it the powerful country dictating terms to the small country?
From what we hear, it has been the powerful trying to prevail. But I think our negotiators have been doing a fairly a good job in mitigating those that risk.
In this year 2018, in terms of whatever is going to happen in the economy, leaving aside the export sector and looking at it from a bird's eye view, will the positivity that we are looking at prevail throughout the year, or is there a situation where we have to be cautious in the future?
Well, we cannot certainly be complacent, but we've gone through a bad 2 years, particularly with regard to the weather gods. They have not been kind. So this is a time for the agriculture industry to look for new agriculture practices. and probably we need new technology, new know-how, and also how to circumvent the natural perils that would come, which is beyond our control, so that we have consistency in terms of agricultural output. Then secondly, the momentum that we have seen in the last year does not look like it would diminish, and hopefully not. So we are a resilient nation. You got to remember that we carried on the economy despite of 30 years of war, and with 1/3 of the country not contributing to the economy. So I am very optimistic that given the correct direction, given the facilities that have been outlined, given the plans, that we could see positive growth for 2018.
Finally, Mr. Jayasinghe, now 2018, even though we might think that it will be positive, there might be certain points or factors that we have to be vigilant about.
Most certainly. Now you saw what happened with Pakistan, you saw what happened with Russia, you can see what's happening with the US. We have to be vigilant, and we got to be proactive. So that it's a standard marketing thing that you've got to be proactive, but I think that is more so important now for us, because we would know what will come up next. So we cannot predict everything, but we can certainly strategize and force you to have, as you said, the plan B. And I think to do that, we got to have innovation, exploring into new markets, looking at new methods of manufacturing and agriculture. And we got to open the doors for more training, awareness, and skills development, so that we build a unique position in terms of exports.
Final question, Mr. Jayasinghe. We know that certain ministries are involved in the business sector, and the subject ministries have a direct role to play when it comes to advancing or making sure that the export sector and the import sector of our country is a balance and happens properly. How important is it for these institutions, these ministries, the officials in these ministries, to have a key understanding, have a proper understanding about what's going on in the country?
It is vital. It is most vital. And I must say there have been attempts made over the last year for these officials to engage with the private sector. I can certainly speak of the experience with the National Chamber of Exporters, where we've engaged with the Ministry of Finance, engaged with the officials at the EDB, even with the Tourist Board. And we've had the special advisor to the Prime Minister, Mr. Paskarlingam, who used to conduct a session every 2 weeks at the EDB.
Advisor to the Prime Minister.
Advisor. So we found that a lot of the problems will be getting solved that way. So that if not everything can be solved, but at least that provides a conduit to the policy makers, so that we have a perfect understanding.
Thank you, Mr. Jayasinghe, for being here with us on Biz1st program, the first program for the year.
I am privileged.
Thank you very much. All we can do is to hope for a better year, a hope for this same trend, the same momentum to continue in this year as well. But there are factors that we have to consider. There are factors that we have to be vigilant and cautious about. So that's up to the key players in the market and the government to focus their attention to. Thank you very much for watching. I'm Chaturanga Hapwaraji. We'll join you next week as well. Take care.